Shriram, you can take over now.
All right. So, like I said, thank you for inviting me. And Nisha, thanks for talking about ESG. I think it's good. It's powerful to now see focus on this coming from a regulatory perspective as well. And I like the maturity again as a country we have where we're moving from CSR to ESG approach. And I think that's a that's a significant move, and we need to really build on that. Okay, without going further into it. Uh, and thanks for the introduction, Rag. So I want to see if I can talk about carbon, about the idea of sustainability in this industry. How does it mean? How do we approach it? What does it mean? Um, is there a structure we could look at adopting in the future, right? So let's start with the future itself. Um, the kind of future we want to really visualize, a world we want to live in is really this, right? We'd love to have something of this kind, something where there is a happiness, there is that green has a tendency to make us feel good, and the fact that it's a better world. However, this is the kind of world we're living in right now. Obviously this is generated in this a day and age of AI. This is not uncommon to create, but this is a very real potential which can happen. And so in fact there are these cities which the 24-hour cities like London, Mumbai, Tokyo, New York, Chennai. These cities, they realize that we have to start planning on management, as in every COP which we have. uh, we actually have this we have these discussions about how high, how wide a wall should be around cities like London, city like Mumbai, which are on the coast. It is a very real problem. Now, we have all thought of how do we solve this. I'm sure all of you have heard enough of these numbers. I'm sure you heard of how by 2030 we need to ensure we are 1.5 degrees centigrade. We do not cross globally the global warming temperature to cross 1.5. Something could happen. 2 degrees could happen by mid-century, and that could be dangerous. 3 is catastrophic. But where are we? Obviously, we are in 2023 now. 2021 carbon footprint was actually a little lower, but that's 2020. But obviously, that's because of COVID. But we are still steadily moving ahead. If we do well, we might do the 1.5 number. But the realistic thing is 2 degrees, right? We're all expecting that mid-century the globe will heat up to 2 degrees centigrade. Now, what does that mean? I think, and I'll also circle back to this at the end of the talk, but I think it's very critical that we understand why this is important. Why are we having ESG kind of regulatory frameworks? Why is the country setting these global goals of 2040, 2070? We have all these things, right? Why is this important? Because think of where we are today. Think of um, how all our action is causing climate change. Based on the current processes, current policies, by the end of century, we will cross 3.1 degrees as of now with the current limited policies we have, which is, we're crossing greater than 3 degrees. This is the kind of impact we could have, which could be reduced if we limit it to 2 degrees centigrade, which could be vastly better than today, but still, than what it could be at 1.5 degrees. The entire world today is running towards to see if the global warming does not cross 1.5 degrees centigrade. Realistically, 2 degrees centigrade, which means the length of the droughts will increase. What does that mean, right? We're all from India. We know this. Mango season is in the post-March, April, mid, actually, right? Till June end. February we're getting mangoes. I'm doing this from Hyderabad. I'm from Andhra Pradesh, and we make mango pickle, and mangoes are available in February. My mother got excited. Is that good? It's actually not, right? Climate is changing. We're getting mangoes earlier in the season. So change in the problem is here and now. The problem is now. It's not a let's work for the future. The problem is here and now. Now, one of the key contributors, them enough. One of the contributors, definitely this industry, which is why we are here today. Textile industry has a role to play. Just to understand some numbers, right? And Nisha also shed some light, but I'll skip faster on these. But the impact of greenhouse gases, which is causing primary cause of global warming, is intense from textile industry. But the bigger impact is definitely from with respect to water, and most of southern hemisphere, not just India, is actually water parched. I have enough data. For example, we were smarter than my company is based in Bangalore, and we have data. I was talking incidentally last year in another textile conference, and I was giving some data where if 10% of population of Bangalore buys one less T-shirt each year, just one less T-shirt each year, it is giving 39,000 families enough water for the entire year in Bangalore city. That's the amount of water. Now, this is a European number I'm shedding, but you just get the idea, right? The amount of water, the amount of energy impact, amount of carbon impact from textile industry is intense, and which is why, thankfully, there's a lot of focus in the industry. So, quickly jumping into industry, you all know this very well. Why I'm showing this today is um, work in this industry needs to be done at all steps. What happens though is many a times lack of knowledge, lack of structure, most of the times, lack of overall looking at a holistic picture. We focus on minute things, one or two, and we feel good. I've been in this space. In fact, the first, which I'll show as a case study, one of the first textile company I worked for. I mean, making them work towards sustainability is Gokuldas in Bangalore, way back in 2012. Right now, they were a progressive company, so the approach they took and how we engaged with them was different. At that time, we studied others. You could have 20 factories, and if you just shift your lights from CFL to LED, yes, that will make an impact, which is good. But is that the greatest impact? You wouldn't know, because our current approach of studying, adopting sustainability, still, even 2 years prior to today, is fairly unstructured. You'd probably convert lights to LED and feel good about it. Or you would say, I'm converting my waste cloth into chindi cloth and reusing for something, and we feel good about it. Is that sufficient? How would you know? Right. The only way we'll know is taking a measured approach to sustainability, a measured, monitored, and bringing targeted approach to sustainability is the only way you can really move the needle, no pun intended, in the direction of positive climate change, right? So given all this, right, just think of a carbon impact. Now, I'm sure all of you know it. Otherwise, in Q&A, you can ask me why we talk in carbon. I'll I'll really take into consideration that why carbon language is there, that you all know. So from a carbon footprint point of view, as you can see, a huge percentage goes into this manufacturing of the fiber of the cloth, right? Everything else is much smaller, and you will see, I'll talk about it, why this is important. So you see, there are a lot of areas which have huge footprint: your yarn preparation, dyeing and finishing, fiber production, etc. There is a huge impact. So all this has generated enough buzz. Again, like Nisha said, I'm glad she spoke before me. There is buzz, right? There's climate neutral certification, carbon impact study, race to zero. Umpteen such initiatives have started globally, a few in India as well. Fortunately or unfortunately, India being also a huge textile industry generator for the globe, a lot of MNCs have kind of nudged Indian companies to do some work. And I will talk about a few of such cases. Importantly, forgetting all these, the coalition worked with UN and came up with 7 of the sustainability development goals, which directly relate to the textile industry. They said that if textile industry adopts these 7 goals, and under these there are certain targets, certain indicators, if you take that structure and every textile stakeholder does certain work in these things, we would be able to move the needle, which kind of drill down to these, whether it's efficient operation, safe water management, responsible procurement, consumer engagement, all these things are there, right? Now, as a structure, and what I'd like to talk today, uh, we distilled this down over years. I've been in this space now for 15 years in the space of climate change, worked with various sectors. We distilled this kind of a thing down to focus on infrastructure, focus on your business processes, and focus on your stakeholders, specifically the people involved in working, right? So let's look at some examples. One of the leading brands, much as we think it's one of those big players, there is H&M, there is C&A, there are enough of these players. I like Levi's for a certain reason, not just because I buy Levi's jeans, but because of a more holistic approach to it. They are one of those early ones who started talking about closing loop. They started talking about circularity. They started talking about water. Why is water important? Jeans, right? We worked with Gokula's jeans factory. Um, they were generating 55,000 liters of water to be treated post generation manufacturing of jeans every day. And the mandate in Karnataka was you cannot let a drop go out untreated. And so we had to work out very innovative ways to treat that water and figure out how water was not going out. So Levi's realized water is important. Um, one of the key reasons why I'd like to talk about them is they're one of the early ones to talk about the ZDHC. They're one of the ones who started talking about BCI as a big brand. They're smaller brand which did the brand level of Levi's, who talked about the importance of giving enough information to nudge a consumer behavior. Levi stood out. Not to be left behind, we have a few Indian brands. These are all much smaller. Known as this is one of the oldest. They've been stable, they've been growing. We've actually worked with a couple of other brands similar to Known as this earlier. Smaller ones, unfortunately, they shut down. They've all had enough. Some of these guys have working with farmers, farm to fabric model. Some of these guys talk about carbon neutrality. Some of these talk about no chemicals. Indian companies have definitely adopted. Are they big? Well, that's yet to come. So, like I said, how do you do, right? What is this structure we're talking about? One of the first thing we're missing even today is setting goals. Now, why is this important? Again, like Nisha said, India has a 2070 goal. 2070, India wants to be net zero. 2040, we want to be 40% carbon reduced, right? Carbon efficient. That means some of you are procurement managers, some of you are manufacturing, some of you are probably distributors. Every one of us, I run a company which has certain size. We all have to do our contribution to hit those goals. We need to be told, how do we do it? Think of it, right? If when you run a company, you would have financial goal. You would say, I want to be 200 crores by in the next 3 years. I should be in 25 cities in the next 5 years. But when it comes to sustainability, we don't have any goal. So one of the first thing we always tell people is set some sustainability goals. Now, thankfully, there are a few approaches to it. SBT stands for science-based targets. Science-based targets gives you certain approach for your organization. You can simply set a carbon goal. You can set a water goal. You can set a waste goal. You can take SDGs, identify those 7 SDGs, identify certain targets and work with them, which is something we did with Gokulas. You can take different ways to do this. But it starts with setting goals, which you then let it trickle down to the product design and definitely customer communication. We'll talk about it later. The other thing we have noticed is, and a part of it, again, Nisha spoke, I'll briefly speak about it, is the idea of integrating circular economy into it. In the interest of time, I could leave circular economy detailing for Q&A session, but briefly, it is essentially from a linear take, make, break model into everything is circular, which means at the end of a life of a product, nothing is going to landfill, nothing is going to waste, but something is repurposed. That doesn't mean the current approach in India is glorified waste management. But what it means is you are very conscious and thinking about what goes into the product itself, which again to the procurement managers is what is your raw material. A key part of circular design is raw material selection. Okay, I spoke about infrastructure. So here's infrastructure, right? What can you do? You can actually have green factory. There are no certifications for green factory. Currently, we are certifying a factory in Jaipur. You can go for a net zero factory. The material which goes into your factory is very critical. The kind of energy, water, resource usage you do in terms of your services design, like water harvesting, water treatment, to the kind of orientation. There are umpteen examples. I'll talk about a couple of them. So on the infrastructure, you can do a lot of things. A good example of somebody who's done this, we haven't worked with them, is Arvind Mills. Arvind actually has done some great work, and they publish it really well. Remember, I said I used the word earlier, measure sustainability. These guys have done a very good job at that. They know well enough that they publish it. Uh, this is the kind of numbers, this is the kind of approach you need to take. Now they have their own goal and they're working towards it. They publish each year on year what's been their progress, right? And at the center of it, they talk about how all the stakeholders are going to be impacted and worked with over a period of time. Uh, this is work we have done for one of our clients, where why I've brought it up is when we talk about infrastructure, we also talk about material, and I want to talk about a little about material, right? People talk about carbon as the only measure of sustainability, but actually there are various ways of measuring. In this case, I am just taking carbon to tell you the various steps of manufacturing. Now we compared for this client cotton spandex, recycled polyester spandex, and nylon, right? So when you look at each of these, you see that fabric and elastic have a huge footprint. Transportation, packaging, and all other things are minute. And of this, unsurprisingly, recycled polyester had the smallest footprint. Of course, we worked with this client and moved them to hemp and bamboo based, which reduced the impact further. But this is the kind of numbers you should look for. And when we studied this, what did we find? We found, unsurprisingly, that fabric and elastic had highest impact, right? And the impact, and this is for Gokulas, the impact of their processes, because fabric and elastic was coming from somewhere else. They were just putting it together. So most of the impact was happening outside. Gokulas had a very small impact. Transportation, surprisingly, was very small. Synthetic had a high impact. Recycled polyester had the lowest impact. So we started understanding this. So look at the holistic impact, right? You start understanding at this level, you start identifying what should I work with. One of the first things, which is why we moved them to a better material, so that the material impact can be automatically reduced. Next, business processes. Um, Again, it's about how well you use your energy, water, how you manage your waste, your communication, packaging. Packaging becomes extremely important. There are tons of different ways. We worked with a brand called Pomegranate, unfortunately, an Indian brand which shut down, right? Now they would send customers. These guys are not scaling because of some of these challenges. And you all can, you're all smart. You've been working in this industry for a while. You would know innovative ways to say, hey, maybe I could figure out a way to use recycled paper and wrap around so that I don't use any plastic at a scale. I can use without any plastic layering, without a scale. We'll have to figure out ways, but packaging becomes critical. Your supply chain becomes critical. Again, another example is funny. I'm using a lot of Gokulas. Obviously, we know a lot of information from them. Their other brand called Enamer. It's a lingerie brand, right? We did a lot of work on their energy efficiency and circular design. You would be amazed at the focus we had here. We had a lot of work on their setup in the office. So without them spending a rupee on externalities in the year one, we showed them some changes. Actually, we had a roadmap for energy efficiency. Yeah, energy independence, right? The year one, year zero, we called it, had no capex addition. Then from the savings of year zero, we started doing some work on year one, where we started using some new material. Year two was into yeah, there you go. Took a little time, sorry. Year two and year three, as you see, we started adding some more capital. 3, 4, and 5 was increasing solar. Ultimately, we started showing more than 28 lakh rupees annually saved. This is just one. This is actually one of two factories, two of their factories where we worked on, right? So this started with a lot of their business process improvement, and then new capital coming in. People, people. Stakeholder engagement. It's very, very critical how you talk to your own people, your vendors, and in-store communication. This is the other reason I showed Levi's. Levi's did a wonderful job. One of the early ones. I used to live in the US earlier. Levi's had talking about organic cotton and sustainable cotton in 2010. In 2010, of course, they had a very small percentage of the jeans. I think 4.6% or something in 29, 2010, 2009 and 10 was sustainable. But hey, they started talking about it, right? I would buy there that time. Olino, I think, has branded really well. They use bamboo. They figured out their target audience and they started really talking really well. I thought this was great in communication. Now, I want to talk a little. I think I'll tell you why communication is important. Ultimately, I believe, and this is the reason I'm an Ashokaville also is, when we say there is not enough action towards climate change, most of us think, what is a knee-jerk reaction? We'll all think it's because there's lack of awareness. We all say, pata nahi hai in India, right? But we did a lot of study. I've been working, we've done about 46,000 tons of carbon in all this 12 years and worked with different kind of businesses, not just textile. What we've noticed is lack of action is not because of lack of awareness. Actually, most of us have fragmented awareness at least. We might not know exactly why 1.5 degrees, what is global warming, what will happen at 2 degrees other than what I showed. But we know enough that, hey, I'm in textile industry, I cause a lot of water pollution. I make Coca-Cola, I cause a lot of water pollution. I make automobiles, I create a lot of pollution, right? People know certain things that we call as fragmented awareness. What we've noticed is the bridge between awareness or fragmented awareness to real action is loss of empathy. What we noticed is we don't feel empathetic towards nature anymore. We built empathy. It's like seeing a beggar on the streets in India today. It's sad, but we see so many, we don't feel that emotion to, and that instant, if you feel a little emotion, you'll drop a few rupees and walk away. But it's not that internalization towards nature is lost. There are enough stories. I'm happy to talk about it. I think that's one of the most effective ways you can trigger change. Nisha spoke earlier about customers can do something. I think the emotion you can hold on to, or you can create about being part of a future is an empathy which is powerful enough, which will cause consumers to behave better. And my favorite brand in that is Patagonia. You've all heard about Patagonia last year. They made a tremendous change in their organization structure. We can talk about that later. But this happened way back when I was in the US only. And they have done tremendous work. One of the early things they've done is they've, sorry, they've understood that it's important to be passionate. It's important to be stuck to your core values. Then you don't need CSR, you don't need ESG, you don't need certification because you're doing it for the right reason. You'll do the right things. What did they decide? They realized that why are people not repairing? I mean, how many of us today go to, if there is a tear in my t-shirt, to go and get it repaired? We throw it, right? Or at best, we'll sue something, give it to your dhobi wala, to your driver or somebody else, and it kind of goes hand on, but we don't use it. So Patagonia found out that, realized that that is important. They created a brand called Wonewear, and they made it sexy. It doesn't even have to be a Patagonia product for you to go to Patagonia and say, can you repair it? They'll repair it. They'll put a chapa called Wonewear and give it back. I think that's the kind.
Yeah, we'll have
I'm
to
like
go for Q&A. Yeah.
3 more minutes
Okay.
and I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you. I was just checking time too. So what I'm saying is Patagonia is a great example for textile industries communication and powerful communication and branding to make it more sustainable. There enough certification. I'll skip this. Time is here and now. This is the amount of carbon budget we have. Again, I can talk about what is carbon budget and all later. Time, if we cross this, that 1.5 degree, I've selected 1.5. If I select 2 degrees, it'll go slightly higher. 1.5 degrees centigrade, this is the amount of time remaining for us as a world. Now, this is the cost if we do not work on climate change. This is the amount of cost we'll incur as a. So the environment minister of Finland wrote a book in 2019. The first line says the most expensive climate change impact would be due to inaction. Anything else we'll do, the impact mitigation will be cheaper. This is my favorite class. Everybody will say, you're right, we should do something, right? Who wants change? We all want change. Who wants to change? And that's where we're stuck. This is what I want to end with. The
So
decisions we make today, every one of us. Sorry, Parag?
no, I just wanted to lead to that, and that is one of the questions, when you say 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, etc., right? For all of us here, I mean, general world, 1.5 degrees or 1.5 in itself, it's a very small number, 2 degrees, very small number. And by when do we have to do it? 2070. Oh, dekha jayega wo to. What have we got to do with it? That is where we are today. So how to kind of, make that awakening? What would be the trigger to make that awakening?
You're
Like
right. You're right.
it's
Thank you
not
for
such
asking.
a big journey.
No, I agree. It's not. So 1.5 seems small. You're right? Actually, in the summer, as India, pretty much across the country, we were in 20s in March. We are hitting 30s, and where I'm hitting 40. So you are seeing already 10-degree difference. So everybody will think, "Arey 1.5 mein kya hai?" You're right. Actually, like I said earlier, and that information is here and now. We don't even have to talk about future. The best example, I can give you a global example. I'll give you a local Indian example, right? Mangoes are not supposed to come in February. The fact that they have come, we feel good, but that what should that actually tell you? The crop cycle is becoming unpredictable. I'm not even going to talk about floods, heat waves. वो सब तो we are seeing, we'll turn on AC, will not go out of house, right? We all figure out a way around it. But think of unpredictable crop pattern. The moment you have unpredictable crop pattern, we can't feed ourselves. We can't predict and plan our feeding. That is the number one problem we'll have. The moment that hits, we don't. I can give you an international example. Spain as a country, in the last 15 years, its summer has increased by 21 days. Its increase in 21 days has severely impacted its olive production. And so olive oil production has reduced.
Yeah, since now we are running out of time, I also wanted one more question before we run out completely to Nisha. And Nisha, your recommendation for the brands that are all here on the platform, right? When we are talking about ESG, what is the first choice a brand should take? Is it the customer facing one where we can show, look my packaging, look my signage, look my branding? Should we take that first, or should we take the processes first? Is there any balance there, or is there any first there if we have to choose, because we may not be able to do both?
So there's no hard and fast rule in this, Parag. I would say, our clients, as in we have a mix of clients, it's really based on what is your purpose of embarking on this journey, right? There's no right or wrong. If you are trying to address and make, do this through a business decision, align your ESG strategy to what your clients want, start there. And they're asking a lot of questions today. They're asking questions along your value chain. It's not only one element, and you can start there. If it is about you trying to save money, improve your business operations, that's a good start as well. So whatever you do it thoroughly. Don't do one part of it. Look at it through, end to end is how you can solve it, would be my answer.
Good. Thank you